Room's starting to fill up, which is good to see. Welcome everyone. Not quite 6 o'clock yet, so we'll just give it a minute or two and we'll make a start. Still a few coming in. We might just give it another minute or two. Numbers are still just creeping up a little bit. I'll just give it a little bit longer. Okay, we might get underway there. Cool. Welcome everyone. My name is John Gibson. Great to have you all joining us for this webinar. I'm the General Manager for Figured, with responsibility for leading Figured in both our Australian market and our New Zealand market. So thank you very much for joining us for this webinar, where we're going to be taking an up-close look at the recently announced Agworld and Figured integration. The interest in this webinar has been amazing. I think this morning when we looked, we'd had over 150 registrations, which we were super excited about. And I feel it not only highlights the interest in this partnership and the announcement, but also the interest in integrated cloud technology in general. And we've been seeing for some time now farmers increasingly using multiple forms of technology on their farm, and the real value comes when you can connect these systems up, get them speaking to each other, openly sharing data, and beginning to serve up real value. Agworld, we're really excited about the partnership with Agworld and Simon and his team. Agworld's a market-leading agronomy platform, founded in Perth back in 2009, and now used by over 60,000 farmers worldwide. And for us at Figured, this is a partnership that just made total sense. And the partners and the growers that we serve in Australia, I think will be super excited by this partnership. And we're very grateful to Simon and his team at Agworld for recognising that also. Malin, thank you, Malin. So including myself today, in addition to myself, we'll be hearing from Simon Foley, General Manager for Agworld based in Perth. Malin Tai will also be joining us. Malin is part of the Figured product team and had a lead role in the development of this particular integration. And we also have Tara Broben on the line as well. Tara is part of our Australian-based customer success team, and she's also going to be facilitating sessions today as we work through the presentation. We've put together an agenda for the session. We're going to keep it relatively straightforward and pretty uncomplicated. Firstly, we'll be looking at why bother integrating in the first place, and understanding just what is in that for the customer. Next, I'll be handing over to Simon, who'll provide some background and an overview of Agworld. And then Mei-Lin will give you a working demonstration firsthand of the integration. We also intend to have some time for Q&A at the end, and then we'll also touch on more events that we have coming up. Tara is going to be facilitating Q&A, and we're happy to take questions throughout the webinar also. So please post your questions using the function located at the bottom of the webinar screen for putting questions in. Just one other thing, just out of interest, we're also recording this webinar. And the intention is at the end, once we finish up and do the follow-up emails, we'll get a copy of that out to you, and we'll also get a copy out to any other people who registered but haven't been able to attend for whatever reason. Maylin, if you could just click on one, please, for me. Thank you very much. So I just want to answer this question, why integrate in the first place? I think the answer to this question is really anchored in the power of the integrated ecosystem. The opportunity for best-in-class technology to easily connect through something called an API, openly share information without the need for double entry. It creates a very efficient supply chain of information that enables the farmer and the advisors to have better visibility over their business and be in a position to really be making high-quality decisions faster. We're very fortunate that our technology operates in the cloud, like Agworld and like Xero. And we have this ability to connect all of these systems up, as I say, providing best-in-class, farm production management, farm financial management and planning, and accounting, and enabling farmers and their advisors to collaborate around this information and really get an up-close and first-hand perspective of their business and how it's performing, and be making some really strong, front-foot decisions that are in the best interests of the business. So we're pretty excited about this integration, and I think the value it can serve up for farmers and growers in Australia, and also the advisors that support them. Maylin, I'll let you click on, please. And at this point, I'll hand over to Simon, and Simon can take us through the Agworld platform and what it's all about and the role that it plays in this partnership. Over to you, Simon.
Thanks, John. I wanted to start at the outset by saying that those that perhaps know me well recognise that I get very much excited on the inside, but occasionally it leaks to the outside. And one of those things, one of these moments is where I really want to be a little bit excited about this, because it's been coming for quite some time, and the origins of this integration started several years ago, and I want to acknowledge the teams from both Figured and Agworld who over that time frame have persisted through a range of challenges and a range of considerations in market development that result in where we are today. I think it's just a tremendous outcome for the reasons that you've mentioned there, John. So again, really well done to both teams in getting it this far. And I wanted to briefly cover what is Agworld. For many of the audience may have come across Agworld in some context, but fundamentally Agworld is about data management for growers. Growers are fundamentally at the centre of our world, but we've been able to build a significant footprint amongst agronomy users in Agworld who work in collaboration with their grower customers in Agworld. And as the slide indicates, they're about being able to collaborate safely meaning in a really good, efficient user experience on the same software platform through web, tablet and mobile experience, because fundamentally access to data is about being able to create but then take it with you into the field to get the job done. I'll move to the next slide, please, Marty. The fundamental problem that Agworld is dealing with is the fact that digitising farming information is really hard, particularly once we get down to the farm, field, crop level and the operator level. Most operations still grapple with the fact that data sits in Excel or on paper or on whiteboards or doesn't exist at all. And that means you hamper collaboration because there's no central source of truth that can be shared to allow focus amongst teams on the jobs to be done. We've got very many different machinery systems operating in farming these days. They have different systems and monitors. We're still hampered by poor connectivity, so cloud-based solutions are accessible but sometimes intermittent, and that creates some friction. And there's generally been a lack of data centralization and APIs, as John mentioned, which allows systems to connect efficiently and seamlessly. And even in the absence or in the presence of these things, there's still relatively little support for how these technologies are implemented. And for many farm businesses, the challenges of these solutions are about adopting them within the context of a plan for their business. And so these things have progressed enormously over the last 7 years. And hence the problem that we're facing here, next slide please, Manny, is really solved in an Agworld context by enabling our customers to capture the data really simply within the workflow on site, in the field when they're doing the job, and bring that together in a contextual way using standardized data. So there's no entry of information that's created by users, so that that information can be resurfaced on demand when required in the course of making decisions. And that's a really powerful experience for users using Agworld. Next, please, Martin. Over the last nearly 12 years now of Agworld's existence, we've built a significant footprint in the Australian market and increasingly in other geographies in New Zealand, the US, Canada, South Africa, where we've focused particularly on the crop production systems, and this footprint represents up to 90% of the agronomists around Australia now using Agworld to deliver their agronomic information in the context of production plans, which are now flowing through into this figured integration, and/or growers who are working in collaboration with those agronomists to create their own production plans or add to them in the course of their agronomist relationship. So a really powerful footprint in terms of leveraging that information into the context of the whole farm business cash flow. We're based out of Perth. We've got our development team there. We've got support on the eastern states, and our customers are well supported in help content and in person as required. Next, please, Martin. In terms of this the figured integration, we're leveraging the comprehensive planning outcome that Agworld enables. So growers and agronomists are able to work together field by field to detail out the strategies in which they wish to grow the crops in the most optimal way they can conceive ahead of the crop production, which details out gross margin information as well as detailed input information. And that's particularly critical these days in the context of limited supply chain, short supply and/or higher input prices. So growers need to be able to plan ahead and understand, are we making money with these larger variables of higher input costs or limited supply. Next, please, Martin. That plan then rolls into some really comprehensive planning reports, which become the essence of what comes across in the figured integration. So by crop and by category, what costs are we incurring? What are those costs on a per hectare basis? And do they make sense in a gross margin approach in terms of profitability at the planning stage? And this information is then able to flow into the whole farm cash flow, that figure and zero enabling, and we'll cover off a little bit later in this webinar. Next, please, Marlene. Once we've got that information in Agworld, then we can roll it up into other different sorts of insights that more easily give a geospatial view of the costs to date or planned costs on a per hectare basis. So growers and their advisors and their staff are all able to focus on some core business metrics that they can focus on to optimise the way they can produce those crops to best effect in each year. And that just represents a snapshot of the example of information that's available in Agworld. Next, please, Marlene. And from an agronomist or grower perspective, the ability to easily get agronomic and financial insights at a farm and field level by a tap of a button is what Agworld's enabled successfully for many farm businesses. Now we want to bring that information and leverage that information into the whole farm picture, hence the integration with Figured. And I think my last slide, Marlene, comes next. And the final point I really wanted to speak to, which is the integration with Figured, is a great example of this, where interoperability is a term that's often thrown around, but in the modern farm business, their ability to access a number of solutions that bring unique value propositions to the business will be connected via these sorts of integrations that's been spoken to today. Just speaking to this picture, the grower is the icon at the centre of the bubbles, starting at 12 o'clock at the top. They and/or their agronomists can sit together, collaborate on a plan, crop production plan and a budget that, working around the picture in clockwise direction, can become a geospatially aware or precision ag aware plan that they can take into the season and execute in season across multiple staff, which then results in reporting analytics and ultimately more information and feedback into the next planning and budgeting cycle. Now, on top of that core workflow from an Agworld point of view is the likes of integrations that we're talking to today. So the planning and budgeting information feeds into Figured, which integrates with Xero, bringing the production context of Agworld into the financial and accounting context of Figured and Xero. But these are just other examples of where we're building on top of Agworld's core functionality through precision ag integrations, inventory integrations, and better reporting integrations through tools such as Microsoft's Power BI. So I'm going to finish there, but really again highlight that the value in this integration is allowing the information that's captured well in one context, being the production environment in Agworld, to be moved into the financial and whole business scenario planning and accounting picture, which is Figured in Xero. And that's a really powerful move, and I very much look forward to getting customer feedback and continuing to see this integration evolve into more of what I think our customers expect it to be. And I'll leave it there. Thanks, Marlene.
Great, thank you, Simon. So now we can actually just dive into the integration. Before doing that, I just want to reiterate and summarize a little bit of what John and Simon have already touched on. So the benefits that we're really looking at providing with this integration are laid out here. So firstly, providing a single source of truth. So with this Figured and Agworld integration, it is a read-only integration. So the data that we're pulling into Figured from Agworld won't be editable in Figured. So we're maintaining Agworld as the single source of truth for the data. So what that's going to do is basically reduce all of that double entry that currently needs to happen in order to duplicate the costs that have already been planned for in Agworld. And our setup wizard, which I'll take you through shortly, really steps you through this process and just streamlines it all for you so that your forecast can be created and Figured with a few clicks, just slicing that time completely in half. The next bit is increasing productivity and profitability. So we know that by connecting up these two sides, so the agronomy side and the financial plan, will allow us to lead to better financial outcomes. And that'll be because the on-farm decisions can now be looked at in the full financial context of the farm when we have that data in Figured. And you'll be able to do continual monitoring with your actuals flowing in from Xero and your forecast continually updating from Agworld and Figured. And then finally, just getting everyone on the same page. So we talk a lot about getting the farming team together. With this integration, we can be really confident that everyone is looking at the same set of data. And that's because we're using Agworld as a source of truth and streamlining that whole process. So you've really got the full picture of data. And now I'll just give a quick overview of what exactly we're bringing across in the integration. So on the left there, you can see what we're pulling across from Agworld, and on the right shows where that's going to in Figured. So in Agworld, we've got that first block, which is the farms and fields. So that's referring to all of the area information, and that flows into properties and fields in Figured. So what that means is that you'll then be able to use those fields in your crop season trackers, which will then down the line allow you to do reporting to the field level. The next block there is products. So Agworld has a very detailed product list, and we're able to pick up the products that are in use on the farm in Agworld and create them in Figured. So in Figured, you could then utilize those products for recording purchases or applications in your crop season. And then finally, the forecast activities. So this is really the most exciting bit, and that's where we actually pull in all those planned jobs and activities that have been entered in Agworld by the agronomist and grower, and we can create the forecast in Figured, and that's done within our crop season tracker functionality. So I'm just going to switch over to Agworld to just give you a quick look at that. So this is my Agworld test farm. So hasn't got as much data as Simon's screenshots did, but as you can see here, this is my company called Figured AU Test. And then within that company, I've got a number of fields, a number of farms, sorry, and then within those farms, I've got fields. So figured 1, 2, 3 are my farms, and then each of them has a number of number of fields, sorry, and those each have an area associated with them. So that's the area information that we'll be pulling through, and any changes that you make to this area will be updated and figured because we're now using Agworld as the source of truth. For each of these fields, you can also do that detailed financial and field planning that Simon mentioned before. So I'll just hop over to the farm planning tab to show you that. And the planning here is done per season and per field. So you can see that I'm in season 2021. And if I just click on my field A, we can pull up the plan. So this would have been created by the grower together with the agronomist. And in this plan, we can see what's planned for planting on the field, crop forecasts, and then down here, the activities. So all the things that need to happen throughout the season. So each of these activities have inputs associated with them. So those could be products, seed, or operations. And they basically just represent all the different costs that are going to go into the season. So these costs here are what we are pulling through into Figured to build out that forecast for you. So that's a very quick demo of Agworld. And just quickly, before we actually jump into the integration setup itself, I just wanted to highlight the steps that I'm about to show. So in Figured, you just need to come in and run through a pretty quick and easy Agworld integration setup process, and it'll go through these steps. So the first thing you need to do is set up the properties and fields. So that's where we basically just bring across the area information that we've got from Agworld and make sure that it's all correctly represented and figured, and then create those automatically for you. The next step is creating the crop seasons. So in Figured, we have our operation trackers, and the crop season trackers are one of them. So those need to be set up so that we can later feed them with those Agworld forecast costs. The next step is setup of products and operations. So we have that really detailed and rich product list in Agworld. We do require a little bit of setup in Figured to get everything up and running so that we can create those costs using those products. And then finally, you just need to map the crop seasons. So this is where you actually say which crops and seasons of data you wish to track where. So that's the final step of the setup. And then the last box in the flow just shows the data flowing into your Figured crop season. So I'll demonstrate how you can go into your crop season, see your forecast, and how you can use that to monitor forecast versus actuals throughout the season. So with that in mind, I'll just jump over into Figured and we'll start the demo. So in my Figured farm, the Agworld integration just lives under settings. So you just navigate to settings and it's here under operation. So what you would typically see when you're setting up for the first time is a country selector, and then you need to go through a little bit of a login process using your Agworld credentials. So if you have access to the farmer's Agworld account, you could do that. Otherwise, you might need to work with the farmer to set that up. I've already set mine up, so I'm already logged in. So I'm landing on this page. So first thing you need to do is select the Agworld company, which again, I've already done. So I've connected up to my Figured AU test account. And then this is the first step of the setup. So this is where we're setting up the properties and fields using Agworld data. And this is just a simple mapping step. So during this step, if you're, for example, already an established Figured user and the properties and fields are all already set up, you just need to do a simple mapping between the Agworld and Figured data so we can create a linkage between them. Or you can create everything from scratch using the Agworld data. So the left again shows everything from Agworld and the right shows everything created in Figured. So in this drop down, I'll be presented with a list of all the farms that I have in Agworld. So that's everything we saw on the map earlier. So if I just choose to map my Figured 1 farm, I can see that it's pulling in those 3 fields that I had mapped out on Agworld and their area information. So now I just need to map that into Figured. So I can do that by either selecting an existing property. So if I'd already set it up, I could do that. For this demo, I'm just going to create it from scratch. So if I click create new Figured property, it'll just take that data directly from Agworld and set up the property and its fields for me. So I'll just do that for 2 of my farms for this demo. And then once you're finished, you can just hit next. So at this point, we're now creating all the properties and fields automatically and creating that linkage between Figured and Agworld. So if I click that link, it'll take me to my properties section in Figured, and we can now see that my properties and fields have been automatically created for me. You'll notice that it just says view here, so you're unable to edit them, and that's because the integration is read-only. So we're just picking up the data from Agworld, and Agworld will continue to maintain this as long as that link is there. So I'll now come back to the integration to finish setting up. So click continue. So this is the second step. So we now need to create the crop seasons. So crop seasons are the operation trackers available in Figured, and you use them for tracking things like harvests, sales, any costs and related income associated with that crop season. So again, if the Figured farm is already set up and already has some of these crop seasons there already, you might just need to review those. Otherwise, you need to create them from scratch. So you can just follow the link to set up any cropping trackers that you wish to map to Agworld. So for this demo, I'm just going to set up a quick wheat tracker, because as we can see, I've got wheat planned and I want to pull in this plan. So I'll just call it wheat 2021. And an important part of this step is selecting the right fields. So we know that the wheat is planted on field A. So in my crop season, I'll just need to make sure that I'm selecting field A so that I'll be able to pull in the costs associated to that field. And that's all the setup for the crop season you need to do at this point. This is where Agworld's data is going to feed into once we link it all up in the setup. So once that's done, I'll just click next. At this point, we're doing a sync with Agworld. So now we're starting to pull in product information, all those activities that are in Agworld. So all those planned activities, work orders, or recommendations that have been entered in Agworld. And we're pulling those all in so that we can create the forecast costs in Figured. This sync will happen daily. So once you've established the link between Figured and Agworld, we'll sync daily to pull in any updates that occur. And this is the next step. So this is the product setup. So I'll just click yes on that. So during this step, this is where we're taking that list of products that are in use on Agworld on the farm, and we're able to create them in Figured automatically. And this step is pretty important because we need these products to be set up in order for us to create the forecast costs against them. And there's a little bit of information we need to collect here as well. So this is probably the biggest step of the setup, but it is something you just really have to do once, and then all the products are created automatically for you. You can use them as you wish on the farm. So you'll have noticed that the auto suggestion box popped up before and I clicked yes. And what that was doing was suggesting products that I already have set up in my figured farm to map to those Agworld products. So here, if the figured farm has been set up for a while and it's already got some products added to it, those can just be mapped to each other. You're just basically saying these are the same thing, or we can create them from scratch for you. So in that case, you'll just leave this blank and it will create a new product. And when we create these products, we're creating them as farm specific products. So they'll be available just to your farm on Figured, and they'll be available for use in your crop season. So there is some other information we need to collect when creating these products. So it's just these 3 columns here. So we've got the unit, which you just select from a drop down. And we show you what the unit was that we got from Agworld to make that a bit easier. Then there's just a product category. So I'll just select chemicals. And then finally the account. So because with this integration, we're building out a forecast in Figured, we need those costs to be against an account code. So for each of these products, we need the account code to be specified. So I'll just choose my chemicals account for that. And that means that any costs for this product will be attributed to this account code. So you'd go through this mapping process. For the purposes of the demo, I'm just going to switch to one that I did earlier because it would take a bit of time to go through all of it. So I've done all of my setup here. And one thing to note is that if you want to skip any products, you can just leave the line blank. So that will mean if you want to ignore certain costs, you can just leave that line blank and we won't pull in any costs for that product. So that's the product setup done. The other part on this page is the payment date and tax settings. So because we're creating forecast costs in Figured, we require a transaction date and a payment date. And the payment date is an information that we receive from Agworld. So we do require a default to be set here. I've just selected 20th of next month, but you can choose whatever you wish, and that will also be able to be edited later if you need to. And then the second bit is just a checkbox specifying whether the values are tax inclusive or exclusive. So again, that's not something we receive from Agworld, and it'll just depend on how Agworld's being used as to whether the values entered in there contain tax or not. So that's just a checkbox where that can be specified. So once that's all done, I'll just click next. This is just warning me about those products that I'm skipping. And then the next step is operation setup. So this is quite similar to the product setup. It's again where we just need an account so we know which account to put those costs against, basically. So this is pulling through operations, which are things like spraying, the costs of labor, even overheads and things like that. So similar thing, you can skip any costs, skip anything that you don't wish to pull costs in for. I've already filled mine out, so I can just click next. And then that'll take me to the final step of the setup. So this is where we actually link up the Agworld crops and seasons with particular crop trackers in Figured. So I've already done mine for wheat. So in this step, all you need to do is select from a dropdown which tracker you want to link up. So I've done my wheat 2021. And then you connect it up with an Agworld season and crops. So because I'm doing wheat 2021, I'll select my 2021 Agworld season. And that then pulls in the crops that I have planned in Agworld for 2021. And because on my wheat tracker, I specified that I was using field A, it's only going to pull in any crops that are planned for that field. So this list might be a lot longer. I don't have much demo data, so it's just showing the one crop. And I can just tick that. And here I'm basically just creating the link between that season, that crop, and my crop season in Figured. So you do that for all of the trackers that you want to set up. And then once you're done, hit finish. And then that's where the magic happens. We start pulling in all of the activities from Agworld and creating forecast costs and figured. So that's the setup done. We can now jump into the wheat tracker that I set up. And we should be able to see the costs coming through. So in this costs and other income section of my crop tracker, we can see that some forecasts have been created. And if I click into one of these, it'll show that it's being created from Agworld. And it's a largely read-only invoice. So you can't really edit anything except stuff like the payment date, as I mentioned earlier, or the contact, which we don't get from Agworld. So we create one cost invoice per date. So we provide a bit of grouping to the invoices, and this should largely align with the activities that you've got planned in Agworld. So from there, as I mentioned, now that that link has been created, any new jobs or activities that get added in Agworld will be pulled into this tracker. So we sync daily, and anything new that gets added will be pulled in. So you'll always have an up-to-date view of what's being planned. And then throughout the season, as you go, actuals will flow in from zero, or if you choose to enter them through figured, and you'll be able to compare how you're going, look at the forecast versus the actual. And I think that's hopefully quite a powerful part of this integration. So that really wraps up the demo. I'll just jump back over here.
Excuse me, Maylin.
Yeah.
We have had 2 questions come through related to costs that might be appropriate just to answer at this stage, if you were okay with that.
Sure, yep, I'll just have a look. So, do the costs apply in the figured forecast when activities is completed? Can you select which cost to include in the cash flows? So when activities are completed in Agworld, they'd be converted to an actual in Agworld, and we don't currently bring across any actuals. So yeah, an important thing to note about this integration is that it is forecast only at this stage. So we're only bringing across anything that is still in the planned state. And we'd be looking at a future phase of the integration to potentially start bringing across actuals. And then the second question, does the product cost applied to each field work on weighted average cost from the creditor invoices? So with that one, we are just bringing across exactly what was entered in Agworld. So sorry, I'll just come back into here. So it is just exactly what was here. So whatever the agronomist or the grower entered, and it won't necessarily reflect the reality. So again, that's something that would be addressed when we pull in actuals. Hopefully that answered it. If not, I'd be happy to discuss further. You know, we're really open to collecting lots of feedback through this. And so, yeah, happy to set up a call or, you know, take any feedback through the green bubble if you want to chat to us on Intercom.
Got a couple more questions. Yeah, that's cool. So where does Agworld get their per unit cost data from?
Simon, do you want to take it?
Yeah, look, I'll tackle that one. So in Agworld, there is a price management component which enables users to define the cost per unit of all the products they're using in their production plan. So that price is whatever the user determines it to be. It may be that it's sourced from an external accounting or inventory solution that provides some rolling average pricing, but ultimately today, price management is the price determined by the user. The source of it today comes from a variety of different places.
Cool. When not all your paddocks are used for growing crops, do you still enter the paddocks in Agworld when they're used for livestock grazing if it's a single source?
Yes, sure. Paddocks or fields in Agworld that are effectively cropped to pasture, that will have livestock grazing on them, can have activities, can have costs can be added in the same way that crops are, in which case, yes, they can be included as well. But Agworld stops at the crop production perspective around that rather than the livestock component. Grazing can be added as an operation, but that's about where we stop, and there are other solutions in the market that pick up on more detailed livestock management outcomes.
Thanks. And what do I need to get started? What's the next step from here?
So to get started, all you need is your or the farmer's Agworld username and password. So if you have access to, say, your client's Agworld account, or if they add you, you'll be able to connect this up for them, or you might need to work with them to do that. But that's all you need. It's completely free to set up. You just navigate to settings, Agworld integration like I did before, and you can just get guided through that setup wizard.
Perfect. One more. Is the Agworld data able to flow through to the budget grid in Figured?
Yes, so just like how you'd enter any forecast or do any planning in Figured today and have it flow through the planning grid, it'll do the same. So yeah, it's just flowing through to the tracker, but when you navigate over to your planning grid, it should be visible there for you as well.
Is there any change to the existing allocation tool in Figured to bring actuals from zero? Always been challenging to work out the best way to allocate and input invoices, for example, spray to a tracker. Is still using the rules the best option here?
With the allocation tool, yeah, I'd say the allocation rules are the best option. We did make some recent changes, so you can select a product, and we'd be happy to dig into those a little bit more if you want to set up some time to go through that.
When do you think the actual product cost from the creditor invoices entered through Xero will be synchronized to the Agworld budgets to have budgets and actuals?
Sorry, can you just repeat that? I can't see it on the screen.
That's okay. When do you think the actual product cost from the creditor invoices entered through Xero will be synchronized into the Agworld budget? Oh,
I see. So yeah, that would be another phase of the project. So we're still kind of scoping out what that looks like. The way I see it is that it's probably ideal to have the applied amounts coming from Agworld and then the actual dollar values coming from Xero. So ideally having a way to tie those up. We're still basically exploring how all of that works. So I'd be really open to hearing feedback about how you think that would be best done or how you'd like to see it. And yeah, we think there's a lot of value in this first part of the integration. So we're really looking to seek feedback on this first bit before we, really dive into the next phase. So yeah, that's definitely on the cards and something that we want to do, but we're still in that process of figuring out what that looks like.
And to add to that, Maylene, the concept of being able to write in updated prices into Agworld is something that we've long talked about. Today it is a manual updated process, and we've tried to make that easy from a export a list, update it, import it back in again. The ability to write that updated price data in from a third party is something we've talked about for some time, but not yet executed from a development point of view. So that again is part of the phase that, as you mentioned, we talked about, and we'll look to progressively evaluate the reality of doing that as we get more feedback.
Which subscription is this integration available for?
So for Figured, it would be any subscription that has the operation trackers. And then I believe on the Agworld side, any paid Agworld subscription.
Yeah, any paid Agworld subscription. Obviously, it depends on that subscription having created, planned, or the type of activities that are relevant in this integration. But for most subscription types, plans can be either created by the grower or by the agronomists that they collaborate with.
And how does Xero come into the equation?
So Xero sits alongside Figured for actuals. So we pull across actuals from Xero, or you can post them from Figured directly to Xero. With this integration, that'll still be the case because we, as mentioned, we haven't built out that next phase to start bringing across actuals from Agworld and somehow linking those up to the actuals coming through Xero. There is something I will just show quickly that could be useful in this case. So in Figured, the copy to actual button is still available. So you could, if you wanted, use that to copy an Agworld invoice to actual. At this point, it becomes a normal invoice, so you can change anything that you need to, and then you could save that and post it to Xero. So that could be a useful tool while we don't have the next phase of the integration available.
Cool. Will updates to the recommendation work orders be pulled through to Figured?
Yes, they will. So any changes that are made in Agworld, as long as that job or activity is still in a planned state, will be pulled through, yes. And we do that synced daily.
Yeah, that was my next question. How often does the data get synced? But that's daily. There's one more. We have time for a few more. How is the data grouped?
So we create one cost per date currently. And yeah, I'd be keen to see some feedback on how useful that is.
And in one aspect of the previous point about data coming across from Agworld would relate to plans, and I think the update would also update on in plans that are discarded in Agworld. I plan to do something, but something's changed. I now discard that plan would update and will disappear on Figured side. So the plan is a moving feast on Agworld side from time to time, and as things are discarded or no longer intended to be done, that does update on Figured as well.
Is there a way of tracking the ongoing changes to operations coming through Agworld to each tracker?
No, so that is all automatic. So any changes that are made in Agworld will automatically be pulled through. That is provided that those products and operations have been set up. So if you have added something in Agworld for a product that you haven't done all that setup for in Figured, then we're not able to create the invoice. We're not able to create the cost, sorry. So in that case, it wouldn't just come through on its own. But apart from that, it is all automatic. So you are unable to see the exact changes that were made. We are looking at potentially adding some history onto those costs so that you could see how it's changed. So that's a potential future improvement that might be helpful there.
Perfect. And I guess for any other questions that you have, you can always reach out on the green bubble through Figured, and our CS team will be able to answer anything specific. And we can also set up a time for you to meet with Maylene if you have any specific questions around that too. The last question before I hand over to John is people are asking about having access to this recording.
Yeah, I believe
yes, and that will be possible. So in the follow-up email that we plan to get out to everybody who has attended the webinar today, and also those who registered for the event but haven't been able to attend, we'll be getting a recording of the session out to you all. So.
I think that's all of the questions we have for now. Hand this one back over to John.
Cool, thank you, Tara, and thank you to Maylin. I must admit, I never get tired of seeing you run that demonstration, Maylin. It's super exciting, and I've seen it a number of times now. So thank you very much for that. And I think, look, yeah, we're genuinely very excited about this integration and the partnership with Agworld. I think this is a first for the sector. The ability for agronomists and growers to build out a comprehensive agronomy plan in market leading technology like Agworld, have that information being directly integrated into a budget and a business plan and figured is a first, and I think an outstanding achievement for both our companies. We're super pleased to get this out. We're really encouraged by the initial round of value that we believe this is going to be delivering growers, and also just to have the foundational building blocks in place to really kind of progress forward with this now is something we're very much looking forward to. So look, we'll start to wrap up now, and Maylin, if you could just click on, I'd just like to share with everybody a little bit of news about some upcoming events that we have planned. We've got a series of 3 educational webinars designed for accountants scheduled to happen over the next week or 2 before Christmas. We'll be pushing details out of these to our accounting partners in Australia, so you can register your interest and attend. The 3 webinars will cover off the first one focused on simplifying compliance through an integrated agri solution. The second one will focus on agri planning tools, adding value through integrated planning. And the third one will focus on our Figured Insights business intelligence platform, which we've just released to the market in the next couple of weeks. So look out for the opportunity to register for those coming up in the next day or 2. And if you're interested, we'd love to have you attending. Click on Maylin, please. Would also just like to share with you before we finish up, if what we've taken you through today, if it's resonated, if there's more interest there, what could you be doing next? We know that we've got an audience of advisors on the webinar today, as well as some growers and farmers in attendance. Look, if you're an advisor and your clients are already using Agworld and Figured, just set up the integration. You can do that yourself. We also have step-by-step guides available through the Figured Help Centre. The integration itself, there's no cost to do that. It's just as simple as working through the setup wizard that Maylin demonstrated to you. If you have clients who might benefit from having an integrated Agworld, Figured and Xero Agri stack, let us know if you want support with a webinar demonstration to that group. We'd only be too happy to work with you to facilitate that. If you are a grower and already have an Agworld and Figured, speak with your accountant about getting the integration set up, or you can link your accounts today. Just check out that Figured Help Centre article. The step-by-step guide is available there, so you can run through that yourself. If you're not using Agworld or Figured, but we're keen to know more, we'd recommend speaking to your accountant. If they're a Figured accountant, a Xero accountant, they'll be able to help you out with information and support around getting started, the various packages and options that are available to you. And finally, if we could just click on Maylin, we'd just like to thank everyone for attending. That brings us to an end of this session. It's been great having you all here. As I mentioned earlier, we will have a follow-up email going out to you with a link to the webinar, and that should be arriving just in the next day or 2. But for now, we'd like to sign off. Thanks again for attending, and leave you to enjoy the rest of your day.